So last Tuesday, we hosted TFC Tuesday Pugs, which is essentially our pickup games night that we broadcast for the game, the finals, for our Discord community. And we were excited to show a new feature that we've built out on the production side, which was instant replays. It's something that we wanted to put together for quite a while, and I decided to tweet about it afterwards because I thought it was really cool and it worked out well. And I basically said, I've combined OBS's replay buffer with a Python script and advanced scene switcher to make really clean instant replays. We are cooking on production right now, and that tweet has taken off, and a lot of feedback is people who want to learn more. So, hey guys, I'm Sam. I'm one of the co-hosts here of the Finals Central. We do a lot with esports and broadcasting, especially B streaming for a lot of community tournaments here within the finals. And today's video is actually going to be quite different. It's not necessarily finals related, but maybe if you're a TO for the finals or running esports tournaments of your own, this is something that can help you out. As we're going to be talking about 4 tips that I have picked up since I've stepped into this role of production and tournament organization, specifically with your OBS setup. So before I made the switch back to OBS Studio, I was actually using Streamlabs Desktop for multi-streaming. We figured it was the easiest way to get up and running, and also the fact that we thought it was cheapest. However, that required a Streamlabs Ultra membership. Today, though, I'm actually going to start things off by talking about something that's totally free. And actually, all these tips are completely free to level up your production broadcast. And the first thing we're going to talk about is StreamElements.Live or SE.Live. All right, so let's talk about SE.Live. SE.Live is a plugin for OBS made by StreamElements. And if you're not familiar with StreamElements, they've been in the streaming space for a really long time. They have a lot of awesome, great products. We're not sponsoring anything, though I wish, but they do things like overlays. They got a chat bot, all of which are free to use for your stream. So definitely recommend checking it in. But we're going to take a look at SE.Live, which is essentially very easy. You just download it. It's available for Windows and Mac. And then you create your account. And then from there, it plugs into OBS. Now, this is going to show some videoception. Sorry in advance, but let's take a look real quick. So my OBS studio obviously looks little bit different. I'm running OBS, I think version 31 or something like that. And you'll see at the bottom it says SE.Live 26.2.5. So it's kind of like a wrapper essentially, but at the core, it is still OBS Studio. It has all the core features of OBS. This is just additional features built in. So what you probably see first here is StreamElements multi-streaming. Once you log into SE.Live, you'll have a page to do so. You just go ahead and do that. It'll log you in, and you'll automatically have a couple docs here, including your event feed or your activity feed here with your new followers and things like that. And you can even see that we have things from our YouTube channel. We have things from my Twitch. And if I actually expand this out, we can see the 3 Twitches, myself, my co-host Cody's, the Final Central, which is our main channel, and then obviously YouTube as well, which we can filter through. Now, the main thing is obviously multi-streaming here at the bottom. One thing you're going to see is I have a lot of accounts here, and none of them are toggled on except for the 3 down here. And what I found is using custom RTMP is actually the easiest way to connect, because for these, you need to essentially log in via Twitch. Like if I toggle one on, it's going to prompt me to log in with Twitch using OAuth 2, which is what you normally do when you log into the Twitch website. Since you can only be logged into one account at a time on a normal browser, unless you're working with multiple browsers or dealing with private windows, which involves copying and pasting of links, I found it wasn't really great for that use case. So what I've done instead is created custom RTMPs, and to add a new output, all that you do is click the plus down here, and then you can choose to custom RTMP, and it's really easy. All that you do is you name it. It's just a vanity label like TFC YouTube, Cody Twitch, the TFC Twitch. Mine's being imported automatically because it's my standard for OBS, which I'll show you in just a second. The next part is the server URL, which is Twitch's or YouTube's. If you're using YouTube Studio and you've scheduled a stream to go live, you will have a RTMP link there on the kind of stream dashboard. You just copy that and pop it in here. And then your stream key is actually on the preview window when you have a stream going live. There's a little copy the clipboard button. You paste that right in there, and then you hit add custom output, and you'll be added down here. For Twitch, all that you do is go into your account settings, and then you go to channel, and then you'll have your stream key, and then you'll want to look up the RTMP server. There's a generic one, that's the one I use, that's automatic, but there are ones also based on your region. So if you're close to a specific data center, or you want to kind of define that, say I'm here on the East Coast, say I wanted to use like Virginia. you can do that. There's a whole list of them out there. Just run a quick Google search and you'll find it. But that's it. All that you do is toggle these on, you start your stream, and then you're ready to roll. It's really that easy. And I've probably ran, I would say, a maximum of 6 broadcasts at a time, 6 different outputs, and then combined them all together with shared chat. And the reason being was we were working with like other tournament organizers and things like that, and having the main feed going out rather than rebroadcasted somewhere was awesome. And like I said, this is completely free. You just need to make sure that you have decent enough internet. However, this does piggyback off of the output from your main stream, to my understanding. So your internet doesn't need to be like anything insane, which probably should talk about real quick my hardware. So for context, one thing I want to mention is your mileage might vary on some of the things we're going to talk about in this video. I do run a pretty beefy rig with a 5080 RTX 5080 from NVIDIA as my GPU, and Intel 13700K processor from Intel, and 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM. It is a pretty beefy machine. Streaming and production are things that I do pretty much fully in my off time, besides my full-time job, which I work as a software engineer. And so, like I said, you might have some variance depending on how you set up your settings and with performance and things like that. So just keep that in mind. Some values and things like that when you set things up may need tweaking, especially your internet. I do have gigabit as well because I'm on fiber here. So just want to put that out there before we get any further, as we are going to get into some more technical stuff that could be a little more demanding. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about real quick is actually one that I kind of just remembered, and that's using SRT to actually transmit a video feed from some remote location back to our production computer. Now, why is this useful? Well, for a game like the finals, I like to run production and I like to cast. I like to commentate on what's happening on the game, but I don't actually have very much practice when it comes to operating a camera in game. My co-host Cody does. And so one thing we needed to do was figure out a way to get a clean feed from him, as he lives out on the West Coast, to my computer here that's on the East Coast that's outputting us to the internet. We winded up trying quite a few different things, one of which was Video Ninja, which we could talk about here in a later part of this video. And we found that when it came to screen share capture, it just wasn't consistent enough. Another option off the top of your head might be Discord screen share, but you run into other issues when it comes to like balancing audio and things like that, as it comes in all on the same audio channel. That winded up us diving into SRT transmitting, which is very actually easy to set up. The long story short is SRT essentially is similar to RTMP. RTMP is what we talked about just a moment ago. It's the server that you're sending your video feed out to, whether that's Twitch or YouTube. Similar concept, except it has packet loss recovery. So if the connection were to fail or packets get lost in the process, we don't take as much of a hit on the quality. Now, there's more technical knowledge to SRT. I don't really know it. It's a relatively new concept to myself, but I will say for our Pug Night on Tuesday, it ran flawlessly, minus the fact of some latency here and there. I mean, we are across the United States from each other, so I think the default is 120 milliseconds ping, and we can adjust that, and we just haven't gotten to it yet. So let's talk about how to set up SRT real quick. So first thing you need to do is actually to port forward on your router. Now, I'm not going to show you how to do that here, but the essential idea behind that is you are opening your router up to the internet. You're saying that we can accept traffic in if people have our public IP and that port that is available, and then they can basically send things in. Now, the other part of this as well is actually sending in your firewall, because while we have access to come in through the internet, we do actually need to have access to bring things in to our computer. And our computer is obviously what's outputting back to the internet, right? So how do we do that? Very, very easy. All that you do is come into your firewall settings here on Windows. This is Windows Defender Firewall with advanced security. If you type in firewall in your search bar, you'll get it. Very easy. So all that we do is create a new rule, and then we pick the port that we port forwarded earlier. Now, here's the thing that I noticed. I forwarded both TCP and UDP on the same port, and I ran into problems. Things didn't work. For SRT transmitting, well, receiving a SRT transmission, I guess I should say, you only need UDP. So we're going to choose port. We're going to go to UDP, and then we're going to put in that port number that we sent out. That could be, I don't know, 9998 or something. You can make this whatever port you want that's not in use. Usually something in the 9,000 ranges is typically not being used on your network, so this shouldn't create any kind of conflicts. Obviously there are ways to figure out what the best port is. I'm not going over that in this video, but that's essentially it. So you'll save it, you click next, and then you should be able to receive traffic coming in on that port. You might want to restart your computer just to make sure that those changes apply, but that's it. It's very, very easy. And we can see even on the Windows firewall here that we have things for like Arc Raiders and other video games. They do this for you. They set up these firewall rules so that the game obviously can contact you through your system on your network. So that's the firewall rules. Okay, so now that we have our firewall open, let's talk about essentially how to actually receive that SRT transmission from our sender. Let's go ahead and jump over to our in-game feed here, and I've already got a browser or a display capture set up, but this is typically this scene where in the background we would have the transmission coming through. It would just be gameplay from him. He's sending it through in relatively as close to real time as possible. So how do we set this up? So it's actually very easy. All that you do is you create a new media source right here. It's the same source as what you would use for anything. So whether it's the overlay like we have there, our little 3D animation that we've got at the bottom of our overlay, it's the same kind of thing as that. But the main difference is it's not a local file. So when you have this box checked, which is checked by default, that essentially tells OBS, hey, this is on my computer, pull it from a file path. That's not going to be the case because we're actually receiving this via the internet, but not in the same way that something like a browser source would work within OBS. So make sure you uncheck local file, and then you're going to go ahead and set your input to something like this. You're going to say what, you know, the input is. You might be familiar with seeing like HTTPS for like a website. We're going to be receiving an SRT. You're then going to have : / and then 0.0.0.0.0 is essentially saying our local computer, the computer that we are using, the one that is broadcasting out to Twitch and YouTube. That computer, that is what this IP address basically says, is this local machine, followed by our colon and then the port that we have open. So the port number that you chose earlier is the one that you should include here. For my use case, I've used 9999, which is the standard, it looks like, for SRT, but you can obviously, you know, use different ones. Say you needed to receive 4 different SRT feeds from different players or something like that for your event. You can open all those up and have like 9996 through 9 or something. I don't know, whatever. The next part is this $mode equals listener, which is considered a path parameter. You can modify the SRT by adding different path parameters, which I will have down in the description, the documentation for this and what is supported. One of those includes latency, so you can get off of the default 120 milliseconds by including that. I just haven't tested it yet because this is our first time using it. But the important one that you must include is $mode equals listener. This is important as it says that we are listening for this signal. We are the receiver of this signal. You must have this or else you will not receive it. As soon as you've done that, you can go ahead and click OK. And as soon as the person launches their stream, which we'll go over in just a second, you will start to see it here within OBS. The other thing that I recommend doing as well is go ahead and tuning this to whatever you want, you know, dropping the audio down, but make sure you go to advanced audio properties. And if you want to listen back to it, that you enable audio monitoring from monitor and output. Something that I found confusing with OBS was what this setting meant. And essentially what it says is monitor, meaning our own ears, our own listening device, and output, meaning the stream. If you choose monitor only, we would only hear it, but it won't output to the stream, which is obviously not what we want. And if you turn off monitor off, then we can't hear it, but it's still going out to the stream. So I have it routed here. I have additional audio setup, which maybe I can go into in another video here talking about Wavelink from Elgato. We can break that down in another video, but I would recommend turn that on at least to sound check, and then you can turn off the monitor if you know you're getting doubling or things like that. Right. So let's talk about next how to actually set things up if you're the person on the other end, if you're the person that needs to send their video to us. That's actually pretty straightforward. You're going to go to settings. You're going to go to stream, and by default, I have Twitch set here for my streams. So this is all logged in probably how yours is, or you maybe use YouTube or things like that, but you're actually going to set a custom RTMP. The stream key does not matter here. You don't actually need a stream key. In fact, I recommend removing it if you're using SRT here. But what you do need is SRT://. Now, the next thing that you need is actually our IP that we're sending it to. So if you are the receiver, you will want to retrieve your public IP and give that to the sender. And you can do that by essentially going to whatismyip.com, or if you Google what is my IP, it will give you a website, and you go there and it will spit out your IPv4 address. Make sure you use IPv4. You'll want to paste that in here. So it's going to be something like xxx.xx.xxxx. That's what an IP typically is, except it's made up with numbers, not X's. And then the colon, and then you want the port number, which is 9999 for me. And then we need one more path parameter. We need $mode equals caller. And essentially what this is saying is we are sending this out via SRT, and we need it to hit a listener. If you recall earlier, our media source, we set listener. For our server, we need to send the caller. Again, this is to be done on the computer that is sending their stream to the production person, not the person that actually broadcasts out. Don't double set this in your own computer, because you're just gonna stream to yourself in a loop, and that's probably a bad idea. So don't do that. And then all you gotta do is hit apply, and then you're good to go. Again, there are path parameters that you can add into addition, like something I think like latency equals, I don't know, like 90 instead of 120. You know, your mileage may vary if you want to play with that to get latency down. That's something that we'll be working on as well over here at TFC. So but that's it. Once you have that in place, you can, I'm going to cancel this, but you can click start streaming, and as soon as that goes live, it will hit your production computer, and then they should see it on their end on that SRT source that you created. Okay, so now that we've talked about SRT broadcasting and capture, let's talk about pretty much, in my opinion, the biggest tool that if you can get used to it and working with it, can elevate your OBS game entirely. And that's going to be the OBS built-in WebSocket server. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of technical terms, but essentially all of this is a way to open up OBS on your local network to be able to be interacted with. And pretty much the main way to do this is via code, or if you're using a local bot, kind of like Streamer Bot, which is, you know, kind of like a chatbot alternative that also allows for control of OBS. So let's go ahead and dive into this and talk about how to enable it. So OBS WebSocket server is built in. Like I said, we just go to tools up here at the top, and then we go to WebSocket server settings. You're going to be given your port and a password, which you can generate, and you do want to enable authentication. And the main thing is you want to enable the WebSocket server right here. This opens up the connection, and then if we launch something like I said with like Streamer Bot, which is a amazing community-led project basically to automate your Twitch, requires a little bit more configuration than something like Stream Elements or Streamlabs or Nightbot, but it allows for a ton of cool things. For example, I've got a command, actually an action, I guess is what the term is, that will shut down my stream if somebody redeems my channel points reward, which that channel points reward is at like 100,000 channel points. But the idea is that if somebody redeems it, it sends a kill signal to my stream and turns it off, and it's essentially me taking the night off. So it is really cool, and we can see that's already connected. Now, I'm again not going to go into Streamer Bot today. If that's a video that you like and you like these kind of technical videos diving into production, maybe we can talk about that on another one. But the important thing is actually to talk about how to enable this. So we enabled it here, and if we hit show connect info, you'll be given information. Now I'm going to block this out, obviously, because I don't want you to know my IP and things like that, but it's going to give you your IP, your port, your password, and then there is a QR code if you want to use that as well. I haven't found a use for it. Now, why is this information important? Well, if you're like me and want to automate some things with some code, you can then do that. All that you need to do, or then the way that I have done it, is I've created this OBS server JSON, which is a JSON file with key value pairs that essentially is mapped to the following. You have host, which is the IP, port, which is the port that was given, and then the password as well. So what does this do? What are we looking at here? And that's actually going to get into our next topic, instant replays. What you're looking at here is a script that essentially I've written and also kind of vibe coded, to be fair, because I needed it really quickly, where all that it does is it's actually looking for this folder right here that I'm currently recording to. It looks at the most recent clip, and then it loads it into a media source of our replay source within OBS, which we'll talk about here in just a second when we talk a little bit more about instant replays. So how does it do that? Well, it's a Python script. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and set it up. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty on like how to write Python code, because to be honest with you, I'm not qualified to do that. I've been a software engineer for like 2 years, but this is as far as we've gotten so far. But once we have that set up, we can run Python, and then we're going to run our instant replay script, which failed. Oh, it's because I'm not in the right scene. And boom, we're back. No face cam here, unfortunately for you. But if we run our script again, we'll now see that it said Lotus newest instant replay clip with the name of the file. And if we go into our OBS here and we go to replays, which I'm going to actually do something real quick. We're going to turn off this real fast. We'll get into that in just a moment here. Okay, so now that we've talked about SRT broadcast, that's me, obviously. So this is the instant replay, right? This loaded up the newest file, and there you go. So I'm not going to keep talking over myself. Okay. So I'm not going to talk over myself, but you get the point. And so essentially in the background, it is looking for new clips, finds the newest file, pushes it to there. And how does it do that? Well, it's using the OBS WS Python library. If you're familiar with Python, this is the one that I'm using. And I will say the documentation is not the best, but the long story short is that it's running this OBS send command, which is pushing our information. So the input name is a name that we defined up here called replay. That is mapped to this source here. And then we have the instant replay folder, which is right here. We can literally just copy this, hit copy address, and paste it in. And then we're looking for extensions or file extensions. We put multiple here, but MKV is what I'm recording out as for our instant replays. And there you go. And that's it. And then the interval is just how often it's checking, which is pretty much 1 second. Every second it looks for the newest clip. It runs this command, which uses that WebSocket server that we enabled to tell OBS, hey, we're going to update the input name, we're going to look up change the local file to this file, which is the clip path, which is being captured by our script. I know there's a lot of technical information. Again, I'm trying not to go too deep into the code, but you get kind of the gist. It looks for the newest file, it calls out to OBS, and then it pushes that link to, or the file, I guess, to there, the file path. So we can see if we go into replay here, we can see that it's the newest one. This updates automatically. So anytime I put a newer video in here, it will push that to here automatically. And that's it. That's all it does. Sorry if that seems a little confusing, but it's pretty straightforward nonetheless. So let's talk about real quick how we can actually build upon this even more. One of the things is that this allows for even crazier automations. We can get really in depth here, and one of the things that I'll show you is actually how we were going to run the Pro League essentially for the finals. Okay, so I'm going to show you essentially how we can evolve from using the WebSocket for like a basic automation, like loading those clips, like I mentioned, to actually controlling essentially an entire tournament overlay, kind of like the one you're looking on your screen now. So essentially the way that I have found best to do this, and I learned this from somebody else who ran production in the final scene known as Burrito Supreme, is actually to leverage Google Sheets. And the reason why is because it's very easy to create essentially a user interface. If you've got people in the back end that can help you out, out and you don't need to run a control doc, they can do this for you. All you gotta do is do a little bit of setup, like with drop downs. So for example, we have all the team names here. We've got the map counts. So if it's, you know, a best of 3 and somebody has 2 to 1 or it's 0-0, whatever. And then our maps, which we'll map out here in just a second. And then we also have controls. But the thing is, we can add more and more to the sheet. And as long as we tell our Python code essentially what's on the sheet and where it should go in OBS, we can continue to just do that. We can basically control everything from an OBS scene. So let's talk real quick about the code and how this works. Again, I'm going to keep it at a high level here, but this is the main one. Now, obviously, this is a lot bigger than the previous one, but this is because this is our largest production project that we essentially run. We have essentially our team logos, which are mapped out to individual files here. These names are being pulled from our sheet that I just showed you here. We've got, what else? We've got team tags, which essentially would be, you know, the tags. So like team secret going to TS, for example, or Gen G actually being Gen G. And this is shown in other overlays throughout this scene collection here in OBS. We got the map icons as well for the bottom of the scene, which is actually right here. Down at the bottom. Oh, not on this overlay. There's another overlay that has it actually, but yeah. And then there's a ticker text, which we're not actually really using right now. This just writes to that. And then we have the fetch of the sheets. Now, one thing you need in addition to the stuff that we've already talked about is essentially a service account with Google Cloud. It's very easy to set up. I'm not going to explain how to do it here because it's a little bit lengthy and I'm probably going to tell you some incorrect information, but there's very in-depth guides. You can set one up in less than 10 minutes. But the idea is it's a non-human account and it's kind of like a bot, I guess. But the point is you're going to share your sheet with your service account, and your service account is going to have credentials, which you can see here, which I'm obviously not going to be showing here, that we can leverage to basically gain access to our sheet. So that's pretty much it. When we start up this script, it does that. It sets up our scopes, which gives it access to the spreadsheets. It uses our credentials, and you'll actually see as well for OBS, we're doing the same kind of sign in as well. So this will log into our OBS Websocket. Once we're logged into both Google Sheets and OBS, then we can start to combine the two. And that's what we do. We essentially go through and we say, you know, based on the values, 1 here, for example, is orange team name. Well, there's orange team name right here. It's column technically 2, but if you're into software engineering, you know why. But essentially column 2, cell 2, which is right here. And we do the same for the other 4 teams, because again, on this overlay, we have 4 teams above us. So we need to be able to actually change all of those. So let me tweak some values here real quick. I'm just going to turn on the display capture. Let's actually run this script here. So we're going to run Python, and then it's just source Python. And we give it a second to start up. And we see that replay obviously did not work. That's okay here. It's not the end of the world. We've changed the script around. So don't worry about the errors there. But we can see no map pick for map 5. We're going to skip. So let's look at our sheet here. Right, we have none for map 5. We've got 0-0 on the map count. The overlay I'm going to be showing you won't have that, but the main one is the teams. So let's flip the teams around real quick. Let's do books. Let's do we don't know. Let's do envy, and let's do dropped. Why not? Now, on the back end, we can go ahead and look here, and we see that we have attempted and successfully updated all of that information. And now if I turn off the display capture here in OBS, we can see that everything has changed. We have dropped with our placeholder logo because we never got a logo from them. We have envy, we have books, esports, and we have we don't know. So that's just one example, but we can even go further than this, right? So if I turn on the display capture again, and there's a lot of us, but then I jump over to something like the caster scene, for example. And we can actually see that those teams have been mapped out up here as well. We can reuse it across our entire OBS project or scene collection. And it's just an easy way to do that. All I had to do was click 4 things in a Google Sheet, and I've updated it in probably 12 places in my production across multiple overlays and multiple use cases. It's awesome. The WebSocket server can do even more. There are so many things that you can control in OBS, more than just different sources. I mean, we can change entire settings. We can even start and stop our stream. for IRL streaming, for example, we even had it essentially have a way to send us to like be right back if we were out in Sweden at the major for the finals and we needed to use the restroom. Obviously, we don't want to stay live for that, so we threw up a be right back screen, and we could do that via a chat message because we use the WebSocket server. There are countless opportunities, and there are plenty of developers who are definitely better than me that can create some even crazier automations. All right, so we've kind of gotten everything together. So let's talk about this last tip, and that is instant replays, my newest fascination and project that I managed to work together. And this is going to actually involve a plugin as well for OBS, which a lot of people don't know actually exists. There's an entire community forum of plugins. I haven't even dug into them. I actually only have one, and it's going to be the one we're talking about today, which is actually going to be the Advanced Scene Switcher. Now, the Advanced Scene Switcher can be found here. You'll download it. It should have an automatic installer from GitHub. And then once you have it installed, you should find it here in your tools. Now, I will preface, I had a little bit of issues installing this most recent time, but my computer's been acting a little weird. So if you don't see it here, just install it a few times. It eventually should work, but they're also very responsive in the community on their GitHub. But Advanced Scene Switcher, what does this do? Well, essentially, it is a macro, but it's conditional. And you might be asking what a conditional is. Conditional is essentially saying like, if this, then do that. So for an example, a conditional could be if it's dark outside, then turn on the lights. If it's cold, turn on the heat. If it's hot, turn on the AC. You kind of get what I'm saying. And the same logic applies here, but when it comes to controlling our scenes and sources within OBS. So let's take a look at our first one here, which is the instant replay that I disabled earlier. What does this do? So essentially, it's going to check to see if a media source is playing. The source name is replay. We have a couple here, obviously, throughout our entire scene collection, but replay is the one that we care about. And the state is essentially what status it is in. You have a couple options here: playing, opening, buffering, pause, stopped, blah, blah, blah. But the main one that we want is ended. And the reason being because we want to trigger things to happen as soon as the clip ends. Because what happens if our clip isn't the duration that we want? So once we have that set, we can scroll down and move on. So we're going to switch our scene name essentially back to our in-game. Now this is our in-game overlay that, you know, the crowd is essentially watching. And we can even tell it to use a specific transition, which in this case, we have a variation on our transition. Instead of our normal stinger, we have the replay one, which just says replay, and it's a little bit shorter to get in and out a little faster. Now, the other trick that I have found that I highly recommend you do is once you have switched scenes, just put a wait here. All you have to do is choose wait and do it for about 2 seconds. And the reason being because when you use this transition, it does update your global transition here at the bottom. And this is important because if this does not get back updated in time before you make your next switch, you'll be stuck using that replay transition when maybe you want to use your normal global one or whatever other opportunity, you know, you want there, I guess, transition you want. So wait 2 seconds for everything to switch around and then go ahead and switch your transition back to your global one, which ours is just called Stinger, but it might be called something else, whatever you've named it. The other part of this is actually pretty easy. We've done the same logic actually for enabling a replay label because there's not an easy way to turn on and off sources within OBS based on, you know, if the source is active or not. This is the way that I've done it. So if our scene is main and it's instant replay, we're going to wait half a second and then we're going to actually show our replay image. And that's it. The other part of this is actually disabling it because we want it to be turned off so I can fire again. And the reason being because we have a global, we have a transition actually on that source specifically. So when we leave our instant replays, essentially saying if not up here at the top, so if our scene is not instant replay, which is this one right here, if it's not that, we are going to hide our replay image. And essentially I'll show you what this looks like. If you look in the top left right here, you're going to see the, you'll see the replay image slide in about half a second. The clip will play And then once I leave, it will turn off. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay, so now that we've talked about SRT broadcasting and capture, let's talk about pretty much, in my opinion, the biggest tool that if you can get used to it and working with it, can elevate your OBS game entirely. And that's going to be the OBS built-in website. So I've transitioned it automatically myself, right? But if we go to studio mode, I'll prove to you that this is actually working. We go back to instant replay. We're going to see that the replay PNG is hidden again. So if I were to enable this, we can see that it wipes in, and when it turns off, it goes away. And the whole point is we want that animation to play, but we want it to wait 0.5 seconds so it doesn't do that during our stinger transition. So the other part of this is, how do you actually set up instant replays now that you know how to trigger them and such? And that's actually really easy. We can go to settings, and then we go to output. And if we scroll down here, we have the replay buffer, which is a maximum replay time. Ours is 16 seconds. I kind of dialed this in. It was 20, and I felt like that was a little long for our game. So I went in and backed it down to 16. And then maximum memory is how much space is being used in your RAM. Again, make sure you heard me that that says RAM. Why is that important? Because I've only got 32 gigabytes compared to obviously like the 6 terabytes of hard drive and SSD storage that I have in my computer. Now, once you have those configured, again, this is your mileage may vary based on how much RAM you have, the speed of it, things like that. But I found 500 megabytes to work really reliably to get me that 16-second replay time. Something I do also want to mention real quick. If this is too low, you may wind up with shorter clips than what you have above. For example, I read articles that said that I only needed 40 megabytes in order to have a 20-second clip, and that just wasn't the case. I was running out of memory storage, so it was dumping things before it could actually record it, which wound up resulting in essentially like a 5-second clip. Doing it this way will essentially get me the 16 seconds guaranteed every single time. But because we set up that macro that we set up earlier in advanced scene switcher, we know that it kind of, if the replay ends, we're good to go. We're going to fire right back into our game anyways. And then from there, the only other thing I recommend is going to your hotkeys and setting a hotkey for the actual screen, the replay. Mine's set to F24. I've got a keyboard that essentially I can rebind any keys to, so I chose a really out of the way key and bound it to an F key that I know is never going to be bound in any game, any program, or whatever, and that's how I landed on F24. But essentially, when I click this button, it will save a clip. Now, the other thing is to start the replay buffer. There is a setting in OBS. I want to say it is right here in general, automatically start replay buffer when streaming. You can check that on, and once you go live, this will turn on automatically, but you can also manually turn it on by just clicking this button here. Once the replay buffer is going, it is going to continue to record to your RAM, and it will, like I said, will start dumping things as the time limit has been reached. So every, second past 16 seconds, the first second's going to get cut off, and so on and so forth. So now that we've been running for a little bit, if I go ahead and hit my F23 there, you're going to see replay buffer saved to OBS replays, replay, and then you got the date, right? Now, one thing is I'm not running my script earlier, so let's go ahead and run that real quick. And we can see already that we have loaded it. We're already on our newest version. And then let me actually put the watch parameter here so that this continues to run. So we can validate that says 21, 38, 13 as our time. If I go here, we'll see 21, 38, 18, this is the most up-to-date clip. This is obviously the video that I'm recording right this very second that I'm talking into. So now that that has been loaded, we should be able to fire our instant replay. All right, so we've kind of gotten everything together. So let's talk about this last tip, and that is instant replays, my newest fascination and project that I managed to work together. And this is going to actually involve a plugin as well for OBS, which a lot of people don't know actually exists. There's an entire community forum of plugins. And you can see that the replay essentially fired. And there you go. That is essentially it. Now, that's kind of it. There's a lot more that obviously I have learned throughout time, and if this video was helpful to you, I'd be happy to dive into any other topics that you think are worth researching. We can happily turn TFC into that kind of tech help for tournament organizers, as we do a lot of back-end support. if you have a tournament or an event that you need help with and you want B-Stream coverage, definitely reach out to us. It's something that we do a lot of within the finals scene. We can even try to help out in other game scenes as well if you think you need it. So yeah, guys, make sure you follow me on Twitter. I will try to post the script at least to load instant replays, probably to a GitHub, so that you can go ahead and pull that down and use it yourself. It needs a little bit of configuration, of course, and some things to make it a little more user friendly, but once that's ready to go, I will tweet about it, and then you can download it and use it for yourself. As always, if you have further questions, let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoy the finals or finals esports, or even want to come check it out, follow us on Twitch at twitch.tv/thefinalscentral. And you can follow me over at twitch.tv/TFC_Sam, as I stream typically 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. That's it, everybody. Thanks so much again for watching, and I'll see you at the finals.